I walked into that bank with my pig, and the manager almost laughed in my face. They said it was prohibited, that I didn't fit their profile, that it was country bumpkin stuff. But when I reached into my pocket and pulled out what no one expected, he fell right off his chair. Subscribe to our channel now and discover how a farmer silenced an entire bank with one simple action. The clock read exactly 10 a.m. when Sebastian Matthews, with his mud-caked boots, crossed through the mirrored doors of Progress Bank, the main financial institution in Hope Valley, a prosperous town in rural Texas. The contrast was striking between the 62-year-old farmer, with his worn straw hat and simple clothes, and the sophisticated air-conditioned environment of the branch, frequented mostly by businessmen and young executives. What made the scene even more unusual was the presence of a pink, well-cared-for pig held by a hemp rope that docilely accompanied Sebastian. The animal, called Benny, was almost a celebrity in Cedar Creek, the small rural district where Sebastian had built his life. "Good morning," Sebastian said with a firm voice as he approached the counter, while customers and employees watched in astonishment. The receptionist, Lucy Phillips, a 28-year-old young woman with impeccable clothes and perfect makeup, hesitated for a few seconds before responding. "Can I help you?" she asked, casting a confused look at the pig, which remained calm as if accustomed to frequenting sophisticated environments. That's when Augustus Wayne, the branch manager, hurried down from the second floor. Her vain man with an Italian suit and silk tie, Augustus was known both for his competence and his arrogance. Son of bankers, he had never needed to put his hands in the dirt and carried a certain disdain for those who did. "Friend, this is a bank, not a county fair," he said loudly, provoking muffled laughter throughout the branch. "The farmers' market is 3 blocks from here." Sebastian didn't waver. Calmly, he put his hand in the pocket of his worn jacket and withdrew a thick stack of $100 bills, carefully organized with a faded rubber band. The bills were worn from frequent handling, but perfectly legitimate. He deposited the stack on the counter with a dull thud that silenced the environment. "I'm here to open an account and discuss the possibility of financing for a project," he said with a calm but firm voice. "I just sold part of my land for a considerable amount and need a bank that knows how to value clients, regardless of appearance. I have more money in the car, but if there's no interest, Union Bank on the corner guaranteed me respectful service." Augustus's face lost its color. The manager staggered and had to lean on a nearby chair. The branch plunged into absolute silence, with all eyes now focused on the embarrassed manager. "Of course, Mr. Augustus stammered. "Sebastian Matthews," the farmer completed. "Owner of Greenhaven Farm." The mention of the property's name caused another impact. Greenhaven Farm was famous in the region for producing premium organic coffee, exported to several European countries. What few knew was that Sebastian had recently sold 40% of his land to a group of investors for an amount exceeding $8 million. Within minutes, the farmer was escorted to the VIP room, where fresh coffee and water were served. The pig Benny, to everyone's surprise, sat behaved next to the leather armchair where his owner was seated. "I apologize for the inadequate reception, Mr. Sebastian," Augustus said, visibly uncomfortable. "You mentioned a project that requires financing." "Yes," Sebastian replied, taking a sip of coffee. "But first, I need to understand if this bank truly comprehends the value of the American rural producer. The money I have is the result of decades of honest work. That pig you mocked? He represents my journey, and that of thousands of producers who feed this country, even while being treated with contempt by men in suits." Augustus swallowed hard as the farmer continued. "The project I have in mind isn't just mine. I represent a group of 47 small producers in the region. We're tired of the middlemen who keep most of the profit from our work. We want to create a cooperative for direct commercialization of our products, eliminating intermediaries." While Sebastian spoke, a young woman discreetly entered the room. It was Christina Barrett, the bank's agribusiness specialist, called urgently by Augustus. At 35 years old and daughter of farmers, Christina had an MBA in agricultural finance and perfectly understood Sebastian's world. "Mr. Sebastian, I'm Christina, a consultant specialized in agribusiness." She introduced herself with a genuine smile. I'd love to hear more about your cooperative. I believe we can build a long-term partnership. For the first time since entering the bank, Sebastian smiled. In Christina, he saw a potential ally. She didn't demonstrate the typical urban disdain for men of the field. Her eyes sparkled with genuine interest as he explained how he planned to transform the old Star factory, abandoned for years on the city's outskirts, into a modern distribution center for organic products. What Augustus and Christina didn't yet know, however, was that Sebastian wasn't there just to seek financing. His deliberately provocative presence with the pig and cash was a carefully planned test. In recent months, the farmer had been secretly negotiating with Rural Digital Bank, an emerging fintech specialized in serving agricultural producers, which offered fairer rates and less bureaucracy. The true reason for his visit was about to be revealed and would forever change the balance of power between country and city in Hope Valley. While Sebastian explained the cooperative's details, Augustus tried to disguise his uneasiness. The numbers presented by the farmer were impressive. The combined production of the 47 farmers represented an annual financial volume exceeding $30 million. Our objective is to eliminate 3 layers of intermediaries, Sebastian explained with the confidence of someone who completely dominated the subject. This will increase producers' margins by about 40% and still allow us to offer more competitive prices to end consumers. Christina took notes rapidly, fascinated by the plan's clarity. And how do you intend to structure the cooperative's governance, Mr. Sebastian? We already have bylaws drafted by Dr. Frank Gomez, who is the son of one of the farmers and graduated in law from UT, he replied, taking a worn leather folder from his jacket's inner pocket. Each producer will have voting rights proportional to their production, but with limits to avoid power concentration. What Sebastian didn't mention at that moment was that the cooperative had already advanced far beyond paper. In the past 6 months, weekly meetings took place in the barn of Martha Sullivan's property. The 81-year-old matriarch, who had provided the space for the gatherings, there between coffee and cornbread, was born not just a commercial project but a silent revolution in how those farmers saw their own value. On the other side of town, in the modest rented office that served as the regional headquarters of Rural Digital Bank, Rebecca Cunningham watched the clock anxiously. The fintech's expansion director, she had come from Austin specifically to meet with Sebastian after the meeting at Progress Bank. The plan they had outlined together was audacious. Use the traditional bank's initial rejection as leverage for advantageous negotiation. What if they treat you well from the start? Rebecca had asked 3 weeks earlier when they were planning the strategy. I've known Augustus Wayne longer than you have, young lady, Sebastian replied with an enigmatic smile. He can't even disguise his contempt when he crosses paths with me at the Sunday Farmers Market, and Benny will ensure his arrogance comes to the surface. The pig, central figure in the strategy, wasn't there by chance. Sebastian had trained him for months to remain calm in strange environments. Benny symbolized everything the traditional financial system despised: the smell of earth, manual labor, rural roots that many tried to hide in their quest for status. Back in the bank's VIP room, the meeting extended beyond lunch hour. Augustus had ordered sandwiches and sodas in a clumsy attempt to compensate for the initial reception. Sebastian politely declined, taking a small cloth bundle from his bag. I appreciate it, but I brought my own food, he said, unwrapping a piece of artisanal cheese and naturally fermented bread produced on his farm. Would you like to try some? Christina accepted readily, while Augustus hesitated before taking a small piece. The intense flavor of the cheese surprised him, evidencing the product's superior quality. This is what we want to take directly to the consumer, Sebastian explained. Real food produced with respect for the land and animals. While they tasted, the farmer began revealing more details about the planned operation. The Old Star factory would be not just a distribution center, but also house a concept store, an educational space about sustainable production and small processing units to add value to primary products. The total investment will be approximately $12 million divided into 3 phases, he explained. We have $5 million already secured with the cooperative's own resources. We're seeking financing of 7 million, with an 18-month grace period. Augustus made some quick notes. The business opportunity was tempting, but something bothered him. Mr. Sebastian, why did you choose our bank for this proposal? You mentioned Union Bank as another possibility. The farmer smiled, as if expecting exactly this question. Because I wanted to see with my own eyes how you treat a simple man before knowing the money he moves, he replied without beating around the bush. And also because I know you've lost 23% of your agricultural portfolio in the last 2 years to digital banks. The impact of the statement caused visible discomfort in Augustus. That information was strategic and shouldn't be available to ordinary clients. Christina quickly intervened. We're precisely restructuring our approach to agribusiness, Mr. Sebastian. Your project could be an important case study in this new phase. I understand, the farmer replied, looking at his watch. I have another appointment now, but I'll leave our detailed proposal for analysis. I expect an answer within 5 business days. As he stood up, Sebastian extended his hand to Christina and then to Augustus. The firm handshake contrasted with the apparent fragility of his body aged by fieldwork. Benny stood up obediently, without making a fuss. One last thing, Sebastian said, already at the door. This isn't just a financing proposal, but an invitation to reimagine the relationship between the financial system and the man of the field. We're open to genuine partnerships, but we won't accept being treated as second-class citizens anymore. After his departure, a heavy silence took over the room. Augustus loosened his tie, visibly disturbed. How does he know about our agricultural portfolio loss? He asked, more to himself than to Christina. The agribusiness specialist smiled discreetly before responding. Maybe you're underestimating the rural producers' capacity for articulation, Augustus. They're no longer the isolated country folk of the past. They're connected, informed, and apparently very well advised. What neither of them knew was that at that exact moment, Sebastian was getting into the car where Rebecca awaited him. So did it work? She asked anxiously. Exactly as we planned, replied the farmer with a satisfied smile, while helping Benny climb into the back seat. Now we move to phase 2. 3 weeks after the meeting at Progress Bank, the old Star Factory buzzed with activity. Under the golden light of late afternoon, dozens of farmers and their families gathered for an event that would mark the official beginning of the Terra Viva Cooperative. The immense industrial warehouse, abandoned for more than a decade, gained new life with colorful banners, rustic wooden tables, and the unmistakable aroma of homemade food emanating from large pots brought by the cooperative members' families. The center of the space, a small improvised stage, housed Sebastian, who observed with contained emotion the realization of the collective dream. Beside him, Benny rested tranquilly, now wearing a small green bandana with the cooperative's logo embroidered by Mrs. Agnes, wife of one of the region's dairy producers. Who would have thought that pig would become our official mascot, commented Martha Sullivan, approaching with slow steps supported by her jacaranda walking stick, carved by her late husband. You always knew what you were doing, didn't you, Sebastian? The old farmer smiled, adjusting the hat that today wasn't so worn. He had bought a new one especially for the occasion, although maintaining the same simple style as always. Sometimes, we need to use the weapons of prejudice against itself, my friend. Benny is more than a pig. He's a symbol of what they want us to be ashamed of, but which should actually be a source of pride. Martha nodded, her 81-year-old eyes shining, with the accumulated wisdom of decades working the land. The matriarch of 5 children, 12 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren, all present at the event, had been one of the first to believe in the project when it still seemed like a distant utopia. Sebastian, do you remember that meeting when Tommy from the creek said we were crazy for believing we could compete with the big guys? How could I forget? He's over there, organizing the dairy products exhibition area, Sebastian replied with a mischievous smile. The movement at the warehouse entrance indicated the arrival of new guests. Rebecca Cunningham from Rural Digital Bank entered accompanied by her team of 5 people, all dressed informally, blending naturally into the environment. At 38 years old, the Austin executive had bet her career on this partnership. convincing skeptical directors that the future of agribusiness was in the hands of organized small and medium producers. Moments later, to many's surprise, Christina Barrett also arrived, though without the company of Augustus Wayne or any other official representative from Progress Bank. She wore an elegant but discreet outfit and carried a small box wrapped in recycled paper. "Didn't he have the courage to come?" Sebastian asked, when Christina approached to greet him. "Officially, I'm here as an independent consultant," she replied in a low voice, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "The board is still digesting certain changes, but I brought this with me," and she discreetly handed over a sealed envelope with Progress Bank's golden seal. Sebastian nodded, putting the envelope in his pocket without opening it. The time for revelations hadn't yet arrived. "And this box?" "A personal gift," Christina replied, handing over the package. "You can open it later." The buzz increased when Carlos Eduardo, Sebastian's youngest son, climbed onto the stage and tested the microphone. An agricultural engineer graduated from the prestigious Texas A&M, he had abandoned a promising career at an agrochemical multinational to return to his roots and help realize his father's dream. "Attention, everyone. We'll begin our inauguration ceremony in 5 minutes, he announced, with the same firmness in his voice he had inherited from his father, although his posture also reflected the years of formal education Sebastian had never had access to. The Adi celebration began with a simple blessing ceremony, conducted by Father Anthony, who sprinkled holy water in the warehouse's 4 corners while reciting prayers for the cooperative's prosperity. The 72-year-old religious man, known for his engagement in rural causes, finished with words that drew enthusiastic applause. "May this cooperative be not just an economic enterprise, but a space of justice, where dignified work receives dignified recognition. Amen." Sebastian then took the microphone for formal thanks. A respectful silence took over the environment, with more than 200 people suspending even their breathing to hear the man who had catalyzed that transformation. "Exactly 1 year ago, when we first met in Martha's barn, many doubted we would get this far," he began with a firm voice that echoed through the space. "They said small producers couldn't organize themselves, that we needed middlemen, that the traditional banking system would never take us seriously." A murmur of agreement ran through the crowd, while Sebastian continued. "I well remember the words of the late Joaquin Silva, who left us 3 months ago without seeing this moment. Sebastian, dreaming is good, but waking up is necessary. My friend was partly wrong. Yes, we need to wake up, but to realize dreams, not to abandon them." An emotional applause erupted when Sebastian raised a photo of his old companion in struggle. In the back rows, Joaquin's widow discreetly wiped away tears. "But today we're not just inaugurating a physical space, we're redefining our position in the production chain and, more importantly, we're recovering our dignity. For generations, we were treated as disposable pieces of a system that enriches at our expense. Today we say, enough." The ovation almost interrupted his speech. In the middle rows, young people who had returned from urban exodus to participate in the project applauded standing. Among them, Maria Flores, Martha's granddaughter and recent graduate in digital marketing, responsible for the cooperative's social media communication strategy. When the noise diminished, Sebastian continued, now with his voice slightly choked with emotion. "This cooperative isn't mine, it doesn't belong to anyone individually, it's ours. And to ensure it stays that way, our bylaws establish clear limits so that no producer, however large, can control collective destinies." Sebastian paused, took a sip of water, and then his expression transformed. The emotional look gave way to a more serious, almost solemn expression. "Now, I have the pleasure of officially announcing that our cooperative will begin operations. With an unprecedented financial partnership in the country." An expectant silence took over the environment. Rebecca smiled discreetly, while Christina observed with curiosity. Both knew only part of the plan. "After careful analysis and intense negotiations, we decided to create a hybrid financing model. Rural Digital Bank will be our main partner for digital operations and microcredit, with conditions specially developed for our reality. Rebecca waved in acknowledgement when those present applauded. Dressed with discreet elegance, the executive didn't hide her pride in having bet on the project from the beginning. But Sebastian still hadn't finished. He adjusted the microphone and continued with what everyone perceived to be the climax of his speech. Simultaneously, Progress Bank, represented today by the competent Christina Barrett, will be responsible for our credit line for expansion and export, with differentiated rates and conditions that have never been offered to small producers. The surprise was general. Murmurs of astonishment ran through the warehouse. No one expected an announcement of dual partnership, much less with the bank that had belittled Sebastian weeks before. Christina, visibly moved, stood up to receive the uncertain applause from the audience. Some of you must be wondering why we also chose the bank that initially treated us with disdain, Sebastian continued, putting his hand to his pocket. It's time to open the envelope I received today. With calm movements, the farmer withdrew an official document with Progress Bank's seal and the institution's national presidency stamp. The audience waited in absolute silence while he adjusted his reading glasses. This document confirms two important decisions. First, the approval of our credit line with rates 20% below market. Second, the appointment of Christina Barrett as new Regional Director of Sustainable Agribusiness, a department created especially to serve cooperatives like ours. New applause, now more enthusiastic, echoed through the warehouse. Christina approached the microphone, visibly moved. "I need to confess something to all of you," she said, nervously tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Progress Bank's transformation began the moment Sebastian and Benny crossed those glass doors. The scene of the simple man with his pig-exposed prejudices that had existed for decades in our institution. And this generated an internal crisis that culminated with the restructuring we're announcing today. What Christina didn't reveal at that moment, for strategic reasons, was that Augustus Wayne had been transferred to a remote branch in rural Montana after the National Board learned of the incident with Sebastian. An incident that, coincidentally, had been recorded by security cameras and leaked to the bank's presidency, in an operation meticulously orchestrated by Rebecca and Sebastian. Progress Bank finally understood that the future of American agribusiness isn't just in large properties, but in the organized union of small and medium producers, Christina continued. And we're committed to being part of this transformation, not just as financiers, but as genuine partners. After the formal speeches, the celebration continued with cultural presentations by local folk groups, abundant food prepared by the cooperative, members' families, and live music with the band formed by the farmers' children. The old factory warehouse, which for years symbolized the region's economic decline, now pulsed with new possibilities. In a secluded corner, near a table where the cooperative's products were displayed, Sebastian conversed with Carlos Eduardo and Rebecca. "Dad, why divide the financing between two banks? Rural Digital Bank offered better conditions for everything," questioned the son, while analyzing spreadsheets on his tablet. "From a purely financial point of view, it doesn't make sense." "Because it's not just about money, my son," replied the old farmer, observing the animated crowd. "It's about transformation. We need to change the system from within, too. If all small producers abandon traditional banks, they'll never change their practices." Rebecca agreed. "Your strategy was brilliant, Sebastian. By forcing Progress Bank to rethink its approach, you didn't just benefit the cooperative, but potentially thousands of producers throughout the country." "Exactly," confirmed the farmer, drinking a sip of cashew juice produced on one of the cooperative members' property. "The cooperative is just the beginning. Our true objective is to create a new balance of power. We want every producer who enters any bank branch in this country to be treated with the same respect as a businessman in a suit." "And what do you intend to do now, Dad? Are you going to retire?" asked Carlos Eduardo. Sebastian laughed with that deep laugh that seemed to come straight from the earth. "Retire? I'm only 62 years old, my son. I'm just getting started. I already have plans for a network of cooperatives throughout the state. But first..." The old farmer stopped, observing Benny, who now received affection from the children present. First, I'm going to open the gift Christina gave me. Carefully, Sebastian undid the recycled paper wrapping, revealing a small bronze sculpture, a farmer with a hat and a pig standing in front of a building that resembled a bank. She had it made, explained Rebecca, who already knew about the gift. It's going to be displayed in the reception of Progress Bank's new Sustainable Agribusiness Directorate. The three laughed, while observing the party's movement, which would continue into the night. 6 months later, Terra Viva Cooperative was already considered a national success case. The concept store, installed in an area adjacent to the main warehouse, sold products directly to consumers throughout the region, while export contracts to Europe and Asia guaranteed fair prices to producers. The hybrid financing model created healthy competition between financial institutions, which now competed for the agricultural market with increasingly better conditions. Sebastian, although remaining active in the cooperative, had passed the presidency to a collegiate of 5 farmers, including Martha Sullivan, who at 81 years old refused to stay idle, and his son Carlos Eduardo, who now coordinated the cooperative's technological innovation program. The old farmer's true legacy wasn't just the physical structures or signed contracts, but the change in mentality, both of rural producers who now recognize their value and of the financial system which had learned to respect them. On a sunny afternoon, while observing from the hilltop the intense movement in the cooperative's warehouse, Sebastian reflected on the journey. The courtyard, once empty and abandoned, was now full of trucks loading products directly for supermarket chains and restaurants in various cities. Beside him, Benny, now a bit older and fatter, rested peacefully on the fresh grass. "You know, my friend," he said to the pig, scratching his ears, "sometimes you need to enter through the front door with your head held high, even when everyone expects you to use the back entrance." Benny grunted softly as if agreeing. On the horizon, green fields stretched as far as the eye could see, now cultivated with new methods, by farmers who finally harvested not just the fruits of the earth, but also those of dignity and recognition. Dear listeners, we hope Sebastian, Matthew's story and his faithful companion Benny has touched your hearts and perhaps even inspired some reflections about the value of rural work and the power of unity. How many times do we judge someone by appearance? How many times do we ourselves feel diminished for not corresponding to superficial expectations? Sebastian's journey reminds us that true transformation begins when we recognize our own value and refuse to accept the labels society imposes on us. As he showed, sometimes we need to enter through the front door, even when everyone expects us to use the back entrance. To continue this journey of American stories that move and transform, we've prepared a special playlist, Roots of America, that you can find by clicking the link to the left. These are narratives from across the country that celebrate our diversity, our strength, and our capacity for overcoming. If this story about dignity and resistance awakened something in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give that special like that motivates us to continue. Every day we bring unique stories that celebrate the diversity and cultural richness of our country. With your support, we can reach even more people with messages that inspire and transform. And you, have you ever witnessed a situation where prejudice was overcome by competence and dignity? Share your experiences in the comments. We're eager to learn about your own stories of overcoming and transformation. Remember, every great change begins with a small act of courage, just as Terra Viva Cooperative began with Sebastian's simple decision to enter a bank accompanied by his pig Benny.